Please don't walk, run away. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you can tell, today's video is going to be a sit down video, and if you've already read the title of the video, this video is going to be on why I left my last job and then altogether why I left accounting. If you are familiar with any of my videos, you guys kind of know that maybe you found me from one of my accounting videos or you came across them and you decided to subscribe, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I think I've been kind of delaying this video for a long time because I do know that a lot of people follow me for my accounting content, and if you obviously by the title of the video, I left my accounting job. So and if you watched any of my recent vlogs, you know that I now work as a financial analyst. I absolutely love my job. I love what I do. So yeah, so if you're interested to know why I left and why I left my last company, go ahead and keep watching. As always, don't forget to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and comment any video recs you would like to see in the future down in the description. And yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so I think before I get into like the tea of why I left accounting and why I left my other job, I think it's important to kind of give some background into my education and how I got into accounting in the first place. If you want to know more details about my accounting job that I did for like 3 years, I will link those videos like above here and then also in the description, so you guys can go ahead and check those out, and then you can come back and watch this. So yeah, so I actually graduated college in May of 2018 with an economics degree. I love studying economics, but I knew about halfway, a little bit more than halfway through college, that I didn't really want a career in economics. Although I loved learning everything econ, I did not want to work in the career field. So I started looking at other options, and an opportunity approached me to do an internship in North Carolina, which is where I live now. And I took it, and I actually really liked it, and I wanted a full-time job. So when the end of my internship came, I kind of was in talks with leadership of what I wanted to do after college, and they offered me a job and I accepted. Now going back and rewinding, I'm going to kind of section off this video kind of like why I left my job and then why I left accounting in general, and then I'll go into how to deal with toxic work environments. I think that's really too common nowadays to work in a toxic place, but kind of how to cope with that and how to move on from that, and then how not to carry that trauma into your new job, because I think a lot of what I experienced at my old job, I kind of carried into my job now, and it took a lot of learning. It's taken almost a year for me to like unlearn those triggers from my old job. So we're gonna get into that a little bit later in this video, but I'm gonna go ahead first and start off why I left my previous job. Obviously for confidentiality purposes, I'm not gonna be disclosing where I worked, just out of respect for leadership. Even though I didn't leave on the best terms with them and I don't feel like I was treated very fairly, I'm not going to expose them in any way, but instead I'm gonna give you guys some red flags to look out for with companies like this, because it really is important, and I feel like it really contributes to your mental health. And I think everyone's goal is to be able to balance everything and balance mental health and balance your career and not feel like you're bringing work home with you. I feel like that's so important. But so the first thing that I will say as to why I left my previous employer is going to be the major amount of turnover, and not just like turnover at like the entry level, like where I was. I'm talking like turnover at leadership, which is like super uncommon for companies that, you know, do pretty well. I noticed over the course of 3 years, after having 5 different managers, that the company had a really big problem with leadership turnover. And I'm going to explain why this affects entry-level positions like myself. When you have such high turnover with your leadership, it doesn't really give you an opportunity to move up. And when I say that, when you're jumping from manager to manager, as I was, because people kept leaving and then people had to take my clients and it'd be a new manager, there's not enough time in between there to kind of prove yourself to your manager in order to get a promotion. So for example, like the first like 3 to 4 months I was working at this company, I had like a manager leave, and then the other manager left. So it was 2 managers had already left before I had my first performance review. So like there really was no one to kind of vouch for me as to why I should get promoted or as to why I should receive a raise. I actually, my second year working there, I had to ask them as to why I didn't hear back about my performance review, as to why I wasn't getting a raise. And they didn't say anything. HR just told me I was getting like a 5% raise, which is like pretty good for, especially like now I know like the average is like 2 to 3%. Because there wasn't really anything wrong with like my performance review. So I was like, well, I didn't get a raise. So that was the first thing, was the turnover in leadership. That was the one thing that kind of turned me off to the company. It wasn't good. It didn't look good for the company, especially at a leadership level and perspective. And it didn't give entry-level employees the opportunity to get promoted. So I noticed that a lot of people that were at my level left because they weren't getting promoted for that very reason. My cat's trying to open my door right now. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the second reason I left my old job wasn't really having to do anything with accounting or the people that worked there. It was more so like I didn't want to work in client service anymore. If you're familiar with the client service industry, it can entail very long hours. And when you're already working in accounting, you're already working long hours. And I'm telling, like, you can never clock out, because like you'd have people contacting you and calling you at like 10 o'clock at night. And then they'd call your manager, and then your manager's emailing you. And it just gave me a lot of anxiety because I felt like I could really never unplug. Whereas to now with my new job, like I unplug at the end of the day and like that's it. I don't even think about work until the next morning at like 8:30. So that's something that I really do enjoy about my job now, is that I don't have to, you know, stay online per se. But I really felt like I had this constant feeling of anxiety with my old job, where I felt like I was either being judged for not being on long enough, or I wasn't gonna get a promotion because I wasn't on long enough. But I think something I really learned from this whole experience was that like I really value time to myself. Like I understand that people love hustle culture and people want to hustle, and that's great and all, but it's not for everybody. And I kind of learned, especially with working my new job, you can hustle and still have balance. You do not have to be on past a certain time at night and be on until like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. Like you don't have to do that stuff. And I know people in public accounting do crazy shit like that, but like, that's like, for me at least, that is no way to live. It's no way to have balance. I also wanted to put a disclaimer out there that everything I'm saying in this video is strictly my own opinion. And I understand people are gonna watch this video and be like, she has no clue what she's talking about. And maybe you think that, but I also believe that there's other people that are watching this video that can extremely relate to my point of view and to what I'm saying. Like I know there's other people that I was working with that felt the same way I did, and they also left accounting. It's not for everybody, and that's just what it is. And that's the real tea. Client service just wasn't the industry for me, and that's fine. Also, the demographic I was working with was people that had a lot of money. And I'm not saying that everyone that has money acts this way, and by no means am I stereotyping anybody, but I would get calls from a lot of nasty people. And it was stuff that I had no control over. They were obviously just calling me to call me and basically, to put it in a less than nice way. And for someone who is 22 years old, coming out of college, like that can really traumatize you. I know like my first manager that I had, she literally went home and she would cry because like some of the clients were like so mean. Like to put it like very like bluntly, like they were so yeah, moral to the story, I know I wasn't the only one feeling the way I was feeling. I know that other people didn't like how these clients would talk to them. Some people got lucky and they had really nice clients, and I had the opportunity of working with a bunch of clients that were actually really nice. But I kind of felt as though I was just a number in a game and my hard work was never going to pay off. And I felt as though like I was able to do my job within the 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 hour span, but that still wasn't good enough. Like if you weren't working until like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, like you weren't getting promoted. And I was just like, I understand that a lot of industries may work that way, but like I just wasn't willing to work that way. I believe that like there was a better way, there was an easier way, and why are you gonna work harder when you can work smarter in less amount of time, you know? So that's the second reason, just like the client service industry just like wasn't for me. So that doesn't really pertain to like why I left accounting, but it pertains to why I no longer want to work in client services. So that was number 2. I think the third reason as to why I left that company also was because of their emphasis on company culture. Like, it literally makes me nauseous when people like brag about company culture. They emphasize so hard on it. And all I saw in their company culture was a bunch of people talking behind each other's backs and exclusivity, and really people just bullied up some people. Like honestly, like, and I'll get into that too in the toxic section because I have a whole spiel on that one. Really, they were not connected. They would say like, oh, we're a family. No, like I'm sorry, but any company that tells you that you're a family and we're a teamwork, or like not teamwork, we're a team, we're a family, please don't walk, run away. Paid to do a job. It is a business transaction. It is not your family. They are not your friends. And if they don't have a use for you anymore, they will get rid of you. I think the final reason that I left my company was that like it was like my final strike was the very last manager I had was very, 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 very insecure. And I'm gonna explain that why she was insecure and how I could easily tell she was insecure. And I'm not talking about like personally insecure. I'm talking about she was insecure with her work. She would not delegate things. When she did delegate things, she would helicopter. So she was micromanaging and it was a big issue. And it was one of those situations where there was execs that really, really liked her, but the issue was people who worked for her did not like her. And a lot of the people that ended up working for her would end up leaving her because they did not want to work for her anymore because she was just a terrible micromanager. And even when I left the company, I talked to some of the people that had worked for her and kind of like reconnected with them professionally. And they're like, yeah, I just literally could not stand her anymore. And so I had to leave. So no longer a me problem. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, so if you have a manager that's like that, I definitely know how you feel. It is not the end of the world. It may seem like it's the end of the world, but you always have the choice to leave. And I want everyone to know that. So basically the final strike was we were not seeing eye to eye. I actually confronted her about her micromanaging me because I was kind of fed up, and I told her that I literally, you know, I cannot function in my job anymore if you're going to act like this and micromanage. And I think after that, I think that leadership did not really agree with me. I think I was kind of looked down upon a little bit. I don't think she was a good boss, and I don't think she was a good person, and I think she was very, very much conniving. Okay, so now that I have kind of gone over as to why I left my old company, I'm gonna go over why I left accounting. The first reason is I honestly, if I have to be completely honest, I just found interests elsewhere. I found that I was waking up, I would go to work, it'd be hard for me to get up, first of all. And I think that had more to do with working in a toxic environment. And then also like, I would just like sit at work and I just wouldn't feel fulfilled. I was like, this is craziness. Why am I coming? Like, obviously I'm getting paid to come to work and do my job, and I felt like I did my job pretty well. But just cause like you're good at something doesn't mean like you should be doing it, you know? So, that's when I got the idea to get my master's, my MBA, and I was gonna do it part-time. And I actually had some of my managers that I got along with like write letters of rec for me, and I am forever gracious for that. Obviously they're no longer with that company, but those are people that I met that kind of helped me along the way. And I'm super, super grateful for that, because I wouldn't be sitting here right now if it weren't for them. So to that, I'm very grateful. But I just found interest elsewhere. I knew I wanted to work in finance. I grew up in a family of people who worked in finance, and I knew it was exciting. I had taken some courses in undergrad for finance, and I wanted to pursue finance. And I think coming from an accounting background, it is a little bit easier to get into finance, because a lot of stuff that you work with in finance is accounting. You need to know how accounting works, especially when you're dealing with like liquidity reports and like how money moves through accounts. It's really helpful if you have, for example, like doing bank reconciliations, if you have that kind of experience, because you know sweep accounts and whatnot. So that was super, super important. So I think that's where I kind of was able to get another job in finance. I think the other thing that really, really kind of discouraged me from continuing to stay in the accounting industry was just like the long hours of working, especially during tax season. I hated tax season. Like with a passion. I did not like doing taxes. I did not like checking K-1s, which is like tax forms for investors. There was nothing in those 4 months that was enjoyable. And I'd sit there and I'd be like, honestly, like, why would I want to do this for the next 4 years, right? Like, why would I want to do this for the rest of my career? Is it good stuff that you, like, knowing it gives you knowledge and you can apply it to your life later on? Of course. Of course. Did I want a career in it? Absolutely not. Now, when it came to like bookkeeping and stuff, like that was fine. I liked that process. And I honestly think that like having bookkeeping skills is really good for your personal life, especially if you get into like budgeting stuff and you're tracking your expenses. Really, really good. But I think when it came down to it, the overarching idea was I just did not like accounting anymore. Like I liked knowing the basics, because I believed that no matter where I went after that, I would have the basics of how am I trying to say this? The basic professional background of accounting. I would always have that with me. I had no interest in getting my CPA, which a lot of accountants usually end up getting. I didn't have any interest in taking the time to study for it, because why would I get certified in something that I just did not have any interest in? And instead of doing that, I kind of focused my interests in other areas that I did want to do, like getting my master's degree so I can get into finance and then eventually get my CFA, which is something that I want to do. So yeah, so if you're watching this and like you're thinking about going into accounting, I definitely don't want to discourage anybody from pursuing that path, because everybody is so different. Everyone has different points of view. Everyone has different interests. Everyone is good at different things. So don't like watch my video and be like, oh God, I am doomed because she said she hates accounting. Like I don't hate, well, I do hate accounting, but I don't think that it's all bad. I have like an itch right here. I think what I'm trying to say is watch this video and what I'm saying and take it with a grain of salt. Do not take it full face of anything. Like my opinion is not the end all be all. This is only my experience. And that's why I did a disclaimer in the beginning of this video, because I want my viewers to know that this is my opinion. This is not facts. So hopefully we've got that all down. But yeah, when it comes down to it, honestly, I just didn't see myself working in the industry anymore. And I don't think accounting is a bad industry whatsoever. I just think that working at a company that was really toxic and also doing accounting, which I didn't like, it really affected me, not only emotionally or mentally, but it also affected me physically. Like I told you, like I would literally wake up some mornings and I could not get out of bed. I was so depressed and I had crazy anxiety. Like it was awful. Like for example, I quit this job and I think like the following 2 weeks, I lost 5 pounds. Like it was affecting my body, my hormones, my sleep cycle. It was affecting everything. So I really enjoy my job now. I think that my skills are being more leveraged now more than ever. And I'm really grateful that, you know, I did work in accounting, because now I know that what I don't want to do with my life. I think I was always meant to take that job to find out like what I did not like, and what I didn't want to do the rest of my life. So I am, in the end of the day, I'm grateful for that opportunity that I got to learn, you know, what I wasn't good at and what I didn't want to do anymore. And I wanted to like do something else. So I'm probably kind of all over the place right now, and it gives me like goosebumps to think about, but everything happens for a reason. So if you are watching this video and maybe you're not even in the business world, but you're in a job that maybe you don't find satisfaction through, and you don't feel like you're respected, and you just don't feel like you're gonna go anywhere with it, lean into it and maybe look for different opportunities. And trust me, in a couple of years when you're not in that situation, you'll look back and you'll be like, I am very grateful that I went through that, because now I know what I am not gonna put up with anymore and what I do not wanna do for my career. So I hope that was kind of a good snapshot of why I left accounting for good. Do I still use accounting? Yeah, I still use accounting. I don't do it every day anymore. A lot of the stuff that I do is like ad hoc requests, and I work with a bunch of programs and planning programs. I work with budgets. I run reports for people, various stakeholders in the company. I really do enjoy it. And I sit in a lot of meetings, a lot of meetings. But it's definitely not client service anymore, and I'm a lot more happier. I feel like my life is more balanced. I'm able to take care of myself physically and mentally and emotionally while also pursuing my career. So that is the last part about why I left accounting. And now we're gonna go into how to deal with things if you find yourself sitting at a company that has somewhat of a toxic environment, and how you kind of cope with that. How do you leave that? What are the first steps? And so I'm gonna go through all of that. So this is honestly probably one of the more popular topics that you may see on the internet with people who work in professional settings, they deal with day to day, and that is a really toxic company culture. And I think it's very common. I think it's very unfortunate. And I think that no matter where you go, and I don't want to say this for every company, but I think majority of the time, no matter where you go, there's going to be some form of it. Maybe not as intense as other places, but it's still going to be around. So I kind of want to like introduce some like coping skills that I've used in the past. Once again, this is my opinion on stuff. It's not the end all be all. So disclaimer, especially with that first job that I had, I found myself, for example, like I mentioned, it was really hard for me to get out of bed in the morning. So some of the ways that I dealt with that was finding other things outside of work, such as friends, family that I could talk to about stuff. And then also like stuff like going to workout classes, or planning stuff for the weekends, or planning stuff like in the middle of the week to do, just to kind of like break up those feelings of like not being able to get around in the morning, or not being able to get up. That way, like if, for example, on a Thursday, if I plan something for Thursday night with friends, it was a little bit easier getting up, because I said, okay, I just gotta get through the day, and then I come home, and then I can go have fun. So that was kind of how I dealt with those symptoms of a toxic work environment. But still, it's really hard to really scope how to deal with that when you're there for like 40 plus hours a week. I think the pandemic and COVID in general, the working from home environment probably made it a little bit better, because you weren't dealing with people face to face like that. But I still feel like those microaggressive comments can still happen over stuff like Skype, Teams, etc. I also found that a lot of the times, a lot of the microaggressions, and if you don't know what microaggressions are, basically microaggressions are like very subtle signs of somebody being condescending or just rude to you, but they're kind of hidden a little bit. Like, I can't even think of an example, but like when you experience a microaggression, like you kind of know you're experiencing it like in the moment. It's kind of hard to explain. But I'm not like an expert, but I definitely like encourage you to go look it up and go look at videos about microaggression in a corporate office, and maybe you can relate to those, because I definitely know I've experienced a ton of them. And I've noticed a lot of microaggressions at my old job coming from like the older women, and it wasn't even men, it was literally older women. And if you're And for anyone who's just going into corporate and not even in accounting, but just like in corporate in general, and if you find that like older women, or maybe like they exclude you from things, or you may catch them talking behind your back or giving you weird looks or ignoring you, or just like saying off the wall things that like people shouldn't be saying at work, I would really encourage you to look deeper into that behavior, because a lot of the times you're going to find that that's coming from their own insecurity, and it has nothing to do with you. And that's not one of those things I'm saying to make you feel better about what's going on. I'm literally saying if you look deeper into why they're doing those behaviors, you will find it's insecurity in themselves. And this happens with a lot of older women. They see a young woman come in who is beautiful and smart and intelligent and has so much experience, not so much experience, but has so much potential, not experience, has a lot of potential. And they get really envious of that, because like maybe they weren't that way when they were your age, or maybe they didn't pursue things at that age and they wish they would have, or they have regret. It all comes back to them. It has nothing to do with you. So that's a really big thing I wanted to say. And that's really common with a lot of females, young females in corporate. If you don't deal with that, let me know where you work. I really encourage you to research more on those behaviors, to kind of really honestly contemplate why people act like that. Like maybe don't take it to heart, but think about why are they treating you like that? Because nobody treats anyone like that for no reason. Unless you're just a miserable person, and that's the explanation, they're miserable. So just don't take it to heart. And my heart goes out to anyone who's experienced that, because I know how shitty that is. And it does not feel good. And there were a lot of times I would go home crying and just felt really down, because older women were tearing me down. And that's like not what should be happening in today's society. Like we already have to deal, as women, we have to deal with enough already. The last thing I want to deal with is another woman tearing me down. And then the obvious one, if you're in a toxic environment, it's getting out of the toxic environment. That's probably like my number one thing. A lot of people may tell you to like go to HR and talk to HR about what's going on, but that really is like situation. It depends on the situation, just because if you're having like a conflict with someone who's in a more senior position than you, I'm going to say more than not, human resources will side with the person who has the higher title. It's just how it is. I personally think that it's not worth going to HR. And I say that because I was the one who did go to HR. And I had to learn this the hard way. And HR, I have a really, really hard time trusting anyone who works in HR, not even like in the professional setting, but just like in general. So if you're having like a toxic situation that's going on, I would just honestly go somewhere else. Don't even try to fix it unless it's like very minimal and it's as easy just having a nice conversation with your boss and you feel like you can go to them with that. I also would recommend going to any mentors you may have. If you have any, you can, vent to friends, family about it. But at the end of the day, if you really want to nip it in the butt, I would just say find a new job. And the place where I actually found my job leads was on LinkedIn. There's a lot of job postings on LinkedIn. There's like Indeed, but I think Indeed actually, there's a setting on Indeed, I think, that notifies your employer if it's on the resume, it'll notify them. So I would not use, I don't know if it's actually Indeed. I forget who it is. It's one of the platforms, but I heard they notify the employer if you have like the company title on your resume and you send it out, which is like snitching. Like, why would they do that? I personally thought that LinkedIn was a really good platform. And also another really good way to find jobs is, this may seem a little bit awkward, but sometimes when you apply to jobs, like on the internet especially, there are so many other applicants that are going for those jobs too. So it's really, really, really important to kind of stand out. I would encourage you to apply to the job and maybe before you apply to the job, maybe search people on LinkedIn that work at that company, maybe even in that job description that you want. And just like ask, I mean, it may seem a little bit awkward at first, but just ask them if they have some time after work one week to have a phone call. And, you know, obviously you have to make a nice introduction. And I can honestly do a whole other video on that if you wanted me to, but that's what I did to get this job. And I would literally just, I would literally type up a nice little intro, say, my name is so-and-so, this is my background, I'm really interested in getting into X, Y, and Z. I saw that you work at this company in this job description. Would you have time after work sometime to have a short discussion over the phone? And it can be like 15 or 20, it doesn't have to be like a half an hour or anything, but more times than not, you'll get some people who like don't respond to you at all, but then you'll get some people that are really nice and they'll respond to you. I had a couple of people that like had phone calls with me, and it was really nice just like hearing like from like word of mouth, like what it's like working at the company. And maybe they sugarcoat it, but sometimes they're actually very honest about it. And one person was actually very honest about the company he worked for, and then that was kind of like it for me. So really encourage you to do that. Obviously, it's very possible you put in an application on LinkedIn and you get a call back from a recruiter, and that's great. But a lot of the times, I think it took me like 3 to 4 months to get my job, to find my job at least. So I had been looking for a while, and it can be discouraging, I understand, but in the end, trust me, it's worth it. No matter where you go in life, even when you go to the grocery store, you're gonna interact with people who may exude toxic vibes or whatever, but it really comes down to who you are as a person and how you deal with those situations. And obviously I understand that no one wants to work in a toxic environment. It's not fun, it's not enjoyable. So yeah, the best thing I can say is, you know, think of like where you want to go in life and maybe take another direction, especially if it's someone that you do work for. It can be really rough. I understand that. So hopefully you guys found these tips kind of helpful and you can relate to them. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, please let me know down in the comments. I'm more than happy to make them. I'm really, really passionate about this topic because I think it's so important for our mental health. But yeah, so if you'd enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, thumbs it up, and leave me some comments down in the comment section for more videos you'd like to see in the future. But for now, that is a goodbye, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.